Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Did you see my team win last night, Michael? Did you see it?
Wizards beat the other worst team in the league, but then the Caps lost to the worst team in the West.
Yeah.
Pick your poison there.
Yeah. Up and down night. Thumbs up, thumbs down night for Old Monumental over there. Let's see. Kenny Albert's going to join us. Longtime voice of Fox Sports for the NFL. You hear him on, I think he does TNT now, right? Didn't he transfer over with their national broadcast? Voice of the Rangers. I believe he's one of the main prominent voices of TNT's hockey coverage, if I have that right. He wrote a book.
I obviously don't watch when we're on national TV, so I don't know that.
I'm pretty sure that he's one of them that went over to TNT when they started last year in their national coverage. Am I correct on that? Well, whatever. He does hockey. So he's a voice of the Rangers, and he does national hockey, and he does Fox NFL. He does all four sports, actually. So we're going to have Kenny Albert on because he wrote a book.
He is,
called called Mike for All Seasons. He's going to join us in about 10 minutes. So we'll ask Kenny about his book and his life in broadcasting, which started as a small child. I was actually thinking about him because at the Giants game, which I think he was at, I brought my son to the booth. I don't normally do this, but it was his birthday. So I'm like, you know what? Let's do that. One time. Sure. I will make an exception. I don't like to have things that distract me, and my family is distracting to me on game day.
Well, everything's distracting on game day.
Yeah, everything's distract. I don't like to have distractions when I'm doing the game. I know that people are going to be in there, but if it's people I don't know, I can ignore them.
Yeah, right.
And if it's people I do know, well, I don't need to answer questions about whether you're hungry or not on a 3rd and 10, in the third quarter. I'm just trying to. So I had to lay a lot of ground rules, but I let him do it. But I was thinking about Kenny because he probably did that with his dad a million times.
Probably, yeah, absolutely.
Probably did. And I'll tell him my experience with Archer and see if any of it rings with him about how he used to act in the booth. Because Archer wanted to be my spotter.
Right,
in the
yes.
booth, which I thought was lovely that he wanted to do that. He wanted to be helpful. He was into it, wanted to be helpful, actually.
He realized the moment, I would think.
He could have, had I been paying attention to him, could have gotten me pertinent information that I didn't have live on the air. He told me this afterwards. There was an injury to Percy Butler in the Giants game. I couldn't see the number of the player who was down on the field, and he was trying to get my attention and saying 35 to me.
Right.
So he was trying to tell me. Now, would I have said that on the air and trusted that his information was correct? As someone who's done this a long time, probably not.
Probably not, yeah.
Yeah.
Not just out of caution. It's not
out of caution.
Judgment,
Not that I don't trust my kid, just out of caution if he's wrong.
Yeah.
And then I got to go, well, my 11-year-old told me that. Guess I shouldn't have said it.
It would have been funny, though.
Anyway, he'll be joining us.
I've got to think, too, with Kenny. No one comes off the top of my head of who's calling all four major sports these days. I don't think anyone's doing it. Let alone he's the voice of the Rangers. Like, that has a whole entire team, too.
I think, most of the prominent people that call multiple sports don't also do hockey. That's the difference.
Yes.
That's the big difference.
Well, I would say it's hockey or basketball. Like, we have football and baseball. Like, Buck did both. But
Kevin Harlan does basketball and football on the national level.
Yes,
He does
right.
TNT, and he does NFL on Fox or CBS. I can't remember which one he's on, but he's been doing it
also
forever.
does the radio call, too, as well, I believe.
He does Westwood One.
For somebody.
He does Westwood One's, national radio call as well. I don't know whether he does hockey. That would be an interesting transition. He's a ball of energy. It'd be like
fun,
Gus Johnson doing hockey.
And then you have Tirico. Tirico dabbled in hockey for a game or two just so it was cool.
I think they just threw him over there a couple times.
And of course, he was great.
It was infuriating.
Yes.
It's like, you've never done this. You're perfect at everything. Yes. How do you do that?
Right. You're
How
right.
do you do that?
Exactly.
Right. So, there's not many that do that, do hockey, football, and basketball. That's a rare one. What does Kenny do in baseball? Does he do Fox Baseball? Is that what he calls?
I forget what he does exactly in baseball, but I do know he's called baseball before. So
is he ever home?
I don't know. Good question.
How do you call all I'll say this out loud because I want to. I do want to do more play-by-play with other entities. Sure. I don't want to leave the Commanders, but I want to do things that are outside of football season. I would like to do that, but I do worry about that. I also want to be home sometimes. When's he home? Is he ever home? Must not be. That'll be question one. Are you ever home? Or what's home for you? Home must be a rental car.
Right.
He's a hobo.
He's like Madden. He's got a mobile home.
He's a very famous
RV.
hobo.
He's got an RV.
Yeah, he might as well just get on trains and jump off of them.
It does say in 2018 he was on a field level reporter for Fox. So I don't know if that's still going on or not.
For
Fox.
For baseball.
Yeah, for baseball.
For baseball. I don't remember him calling baseball.
I don't either, but they also rotate some of those guys through, especially if there's 2 or 3 games on. So
maybe
I don't.
He's the second they need somebody because somebody's doing this thing.
Exactly.
Maybe bring him up. All right. Okay, we'll talk to Kenny in a little bit. 2 quick things before he calls us in about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Bears won last night, which everybody's just going cuckoo around here because they're screaming draft position. Everybody became a big Bears fan last night. It is good and bad.
Yeah.
It could potentially move us up in the first round, and it will move us back in the second round. But obviously, anything that has a number 1 through 4 on it's going to get everybody in a tizzy.
Yes.
So them winning at the buzzer last night, for me, it's still too early.
it is.
5 games to go. I can't sit here and actually hope they lose. I don't want that to happen. I want them to at least win a couple of these games down the stretch, just for the sake of, I don't know, having a respectable franchise. So I don't really want to see that happen. But I did notice how giddy everybody was when Santos made that field goal last night and people are screaming, number 4. So that's happening.
Well, look at the Commander's schedule.
I think actually officially they're not, which is weird because of strength of schedule. The Bears' strength of schedule is harder, and therefore they are still the number 4 pick. If we are the only 2 teams with the same record, then we would get that pick. But because we're not the only 2 teams, because it goes by strength of schedule with 4 wins. It goes by strength of schedule, and therefore Washington actually doesn't have the number 4 pick. But the road is opened up to we're climbing up the charts is what's happening.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it is too early to tell because would it shock you if the Commanders won a game at home here down the stretch? No,
I think them winning a couple of games down the stretch here shouldn't really be out of the realm. They're going to play Dallas, who's going to be in the playoffs. And because Philadelphia doesn't lose when you think they're going to lose, is probably playing for a wild card. And actually, you could already see this happening. They're going to be the top wild card, and they're going to be locked in.
Exactly. Yep.
So they got nothing to play for, which means, are they really going to bring out Dak and those guys? Probably not. Right. I already see it. You can see the future with that. So that one is open to be won because Dallas isn't going to play their. You think they're going to play Micah Parsons in a game that doesn't matter before the play? Of course not. They're not going to.
They might play Dak if his MVP stuff is heating up, but I wouldn't.
The Niners just killed Seattle.
Yeah, right.
Okay? They're going to play them again. There's nobody else in the division that can catch them. It's not going to happen, right? So we're playing them 2 weeks before the end of the regular season.
What, New Year's Eve, right?
Yes. They're playing Philadelphia this weekend. If they were to lose to Philadelphia, they're done to try to get the one. That's over with, which means they'll be locked in as a division winner with nowhere to go because they won't be able to get the 1 seed. So now, if they beat Philadelphia, different story, they'll probably have a lot to play for in that game. If they don't, that's number 2, where I know it's 2 weeks in advance of the end of the regular season, but you think they're going to play their guys if nothing's on the line, which is very possible to be the case? Doubtful. And then we're playing the Rams and the Jets, and frankly, Washington could win either one of those games.
Yep.
Tim Effin Boyle is playing for the Jets right now.
Tim Effin Boyle.
Rodgers admits now that if they're not in the playoff hunt, he may rethink all of this.
Of course he is.
Because he's not an idiot.
Right.
I appreciated, actually, now that we're here, I appreciated that I think he did this just to keep his guys engaged. Right. And just said, don't give up on the season. And I may come back to save you at the end if you guys get there. They're not going to get there because they literally can't score a touchdown with anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. Saleh should play quarterback. Can't score a touchdown.
They're throwing more touchdowns to the other team.
So we're playing Tim Effin Boyle in the worst offense in the league. What, we can't win that when we unveil our new and improved defense, which is about to come out this weekend?
Same thing, by the way. That one's on Christmas Eve, so we don't even know who's going to be focused or unfocused for that game as well. I think this is dangerous this year, where you have both Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve for full-on game days for the NFL.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see some ugly games because I think you're just going to see teams that are like, eh.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can see the roadmap. Then they're playing the Rams, who are very competitive and actually, as it stands right now, might have a shot to get into the wild card.
Rams will probably beat them.
That game actually lines up now to potentially be more competitive than the 3 after it.
Right. Yes.
Potentially.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this weekend is, this. If past return, this could be ugly. I don't love the coverage schemes on Tyreek Hill, personally. From what I've seen so far, I'm a little concerned about that. Just a little bit concerned about that. But I've been told new and improved defense is about to be unveiled.
I don't think the words new and improved were said.
It has to be improved. It can't be worse. Well, I shouldn't have said that. Because they're playing a team.
You're playing a team that scored 60 earlier this year.
70.
70. Sorry.
70. They put up 70.
So, are they going to score 80 against us?
Actually, amazingly, our guy is still the leading passer in the NFL. Did you know that? I thought Tua might have passed him here, but I guess they haven't scored a lot the last couple of weeks.
Well, he's
down to.
He's also playing behind.
Fourth.
He's playing behind in every game anyway, so they're not going to.
Who's that? Hal?
Yeah.
Yeah, he throws the ball a lot.
They don't stop throwing the ball. So yeah, of course he's leading the.
Let's see if anyone saw this one coming this year. Top 5 passers by yardage: Sam Howell, C.J. Stroud, Josh Allen. Stop complaining about him. Yeah. Tua, Jared Goff. That's your top 5.
Stroud.
That's your top 5.
Stroud, I would have been able to see only because
they
were
top 2.
Only
top 2.
Top 5. Top 5.
Really?
Only because if they were going to be behind in a million games.
I was told their skill position players aren't very good, and I don't know. They've sucked for a while, so I don't know. And he's a rookie.
It's the same thing, though. Hal's not even throwing to his good skill position players all the time and leads the league in yards. With Stroud, they were going to be behind in a lot of games. I would see it. Golf, absolutely not, though. Golf, absolutely
right. Actually, this is another story for another day that I think we'll probably have to get into at some point. All the people who are starting to make cases about McLaurin because he's not putting up numbers like he did, stop it.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
I don't follow those people.
Stop.
See,
you can't find something wrong with everybody.
My timeline's pretty
He
clean.
was targeted a ton last week. The ball wasn't there. And if you just go rewatch, there wasn't like drops or something. It wasn't any of that. And now he's getting nitpicked. I don't want to hear it.
If any of the people I follow do that, that's an unfollow. So I think I keep my timeline cleansed of that type of Joker stuff. So.
One other thing that I would like to bring up before Kenny calls, and if I don't have time to get through all of it, I will revisit it.
Yeah.
But my partner in the booth, London Fletcher, is a semifinalist for the Hall of Fame again. I think he's a no-brainer, and I'm not just saying that biased because he played here and because I work with him and I know what kind of person he is. So I'm rooting for him. This point got pointed out during the Seattle game. I almost couldn't believe this stat. But he had, first off, number one, he is a champion. He played on a Super Bowl winning team.
The Rams,
number one. 2, he had an incredibly long career. 3, and this was the number that was pointed out. We played Seattle because Bobby Wagner was playing. Bobby Wagner, the stat came up that he had 11 straight 100-plus tackle seasons. There's only one other player this century that's had more consecutive of that, and it was 13, and it's him.
Yeah, right.
So I know that nationally, I don't think people think of him like Ray Lewis or somebody who's like an obvious Hall of Fame middle linebacker, but he had the career, the stats, the stamina, he had the length of time, and he is a champion. So I hope that counts for something here. Now, I don't know why I didn't pull this up. I want to see who here it is, the other semifinalists, because that's what matters here. Who's up?
Right.
Who's up? And that's typically the problem.
There are 2
one of them is Antonio
ones.
Gates.
Yeah, that's one of them.
He's going in because he's got the most prolific numbers of any tight end ever.
Yep.
It's like Kelsey. He's going to go in first ballot. Julius Peppers is up, and people are treating him as if it's a no-brainer that he will go in. So I don't know. Here's the other semifinalists from last year, because this matters too, the ones that recently and didn't go in. Jared Allen. I would take London over him. Dwight Freeney, that's a tough one.
Yep.
Champion with the Colts, great defensive end, that's a tough one. Devin Hester, if they do it, we will automatically freak out that Brian Mitchell's not in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
If he's in the Hall of Fame, Brian Mitchell's in the Hall of Fame. And in fact, Brian Mitchell should go in first. And I don't want to ever hear any different about that.
Correct.
Andre Johnson, that's tough. All-time leading receiver for the Texans, I think Hall of Fame player. Torrey Holt. Champion.
Yep.
Great numbers.
Part of one of the most prolific offenses ever.
Darren Woodson hasn't gotten in yet.
Okay.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Willie Anderson, the tackle, great player. They always have a hard time, though, because unless you're a name player like
you're the
Baselli,
1-1 type guy.
Correct. Yeah. And then the one that I think is going to really hurt London's chances this year is Patrick Willis. Because I think he's got better name recognition than London does. He does not have half the career that London does.
That's right.
But because of his name,
early?
yes, because of injuries. because of name recognition. See, this is the one where if Devin Hester goes in, I'll go, Brian Mitchell should be in. It should be before him. If Patrick Willis goes in, London should go in before him.
I agree.
So I hope that happens. Other semifinalists, Eric Allen, Anquan Bolden, who I think should be in the Hall of Fame, Eddie George. That's a tough one not to go in the Hall of Fame yet. Yep. James Harrison, Rodney Harrison, Robert Mathis, who I think is going to have a hard time getting in. Steve Smith hasn't gotten in yet. That's a problem.
Is Steve Smith a Hall of Famer? I'd have to look at the numbers, but
I think he is.
I'd have to look at the numbers.
Didn't he play in multiple Super Bowls with 2 different teams?
He played
the Super Bowl with Carolina that they lost to New England. Did he play on the Ravens teams that got to the Super Bowl? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
They cycled through those number 1 wide receivers for a while.
Fred Taylor's up. That's a tough one. Hines Ward is up. Hines Ward, to me, is a on the cusp, a very good player. Probably isn't a Hall of Famer. That's just my opinion. Ricky Waters, who I don't think is a Hall of Famer. Reggie Wayne
probably should be in.
Tough one.
Yeah.
Vince Wilfork, another one. Tough one, right? So I think obviously, this is any year, but he's in a very hefty group. I think there's almost no doubt that Gates will get one of the spots. And I think because the way they're writing about Julius Peppers sounds like I don't know why they're treating him like a slam dunk, but they are acting like he is, which I'm a little bit surprised by.
I mean,
with his name, he was a very, very, very good player. I wouldn't have a problem if he goes into the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's a slam dunk like Gates, who changed his position, frankly. Him and Tony Gonzalez changed that position.
I think it's probably longevity for Peppers. 17 years.
Yeah, he did play a long time. So his numbers are prolific.
159 and a half sacks, 9-time Pro Bowler.
All right, so he's going to get in. That's why.
Yeah,
he played 17. But if we're going to talk longevity and stacked numbers, London Fletcher falls in that category.
I agree.
But he doesn't have the public name that Peppers or Gates have.
Right.
So I think that's where he's falling short, even though it shouldn't be that way. That's where he's falling short. But I just, obviously, not only am I biased, but I do think he belongs there. I hope he gets in. Yeah. I think he waited a year. He didn't get in on first ballot. I'd like to see London get in, and we'll be talking about that, obviously, on the broadcast.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I will say this. I always see the stats lined up with both Ray Lewis and him, and the stats are super similar in terms of how they are. You could put, if you didn't put names on them, you'd go, oh, those are both Hall of Famers. It would literally be, oh, they should both be getting in. Ray Lewis, a first ballot Hall of Famer, of course. I would say London wasn't as dynamic, but Ray Lewis might be one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker of the modern era, and his numbers stack up right there.
You know what his candidacy reminds me of, at least with Washington? Art Monk's. Mm-hmm. Art Monk took a long time to get into the Hall of Fame. Art Monk, everybody knew was a great player, but didn't have a big public persona on purpose.
Yeah, right.
London, I don't think, was against having a big public persona. He just, for whatever reason, didn't have one.
He was a leader. He was always fired up.
But he wasn't the guy on TV. Right. He's not Ray Lewis. They're not showing his pregame speeches. They're not they don't talk about him that way. And that stuff matters here. That's why I say Patrick Willis could get in over him because he was a name brand linebacker. And London, who had a better career than him, and it's not even close, really, because he wasn't a superstar in the media, may or may not.
Right.
So I hope that changes. All right, we're waiting on Kenny, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we take a quick break?
I've got some feelers out for him right now. So
why don't we take a quick break and hopefully have Kenny Albert on the other side. Brave Washington Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Let's welcome in Kenny Albert, one of the great broadcasters out there doing every professional sport, which is unusual. He's called a lot of Commanders games this year on Fox. He's voice of the New York Rangers, the voice of TNT for the NHL, and has a new book out called A Mic for All Seasons about his career to this point, which typically, Kenny, when you write, about your career, it typically means it's over, but it seems like you're still in the middle of it. So what drew you to write this now?
Well, Bram, hopefully it's not over. And great to see you a couple of weeks ago when I had the Commanders game. Always good to catch up in person. I felt like I had a lot of stories from 30 years in the business and never really had time to sit down and put pen to paper. And then during the pandemic, when we were all home for, a couple of months, and for me it was 146 days, I had been approached by a book agent a few years prior to that, and he said, if you're ever interested in actually doing this, let me know, and I can try and hook you up with a publisher. And it all came together back in 2020, so I sat down, started to write some sample chapters, put together an outline, and actually did it myself. No ghostwriter, wanted it to be in my words, my voice. Always enjoyed writing back in high school and college, so that's really how it all started. And then over the next 2.5 years or so, continued along, finished it up on airplanes and hotels, at home when I had the opportunity. And it was a bit of a daunting project when I first signed up with Triumph Books. They said, okay, get us 70,000 words by September of 2022. And I remember looking at the computer screen at one point, I was at around 30,000. And there was also some redundancy, so I knew I would have to edit some stuff out and didn't know how I would ever make it to that 70,000 mark. But once it was all said and done, I was up around 80,000. They, made some edits, went through it over the next few months, and really excited when it first came out. I first saw it in late August, and it was out to the public in October.
Does it start with your childhood with your dad, or does it start with your career? How did you kind of think about that?
So it actually starts with a story about how my parents met, which was actually at Shea Stadium, believe it or not. So if it were not for the Mets franchise and my father doing a pregame show, pre and post on the radio for the Mets back in 1964 when he was 23 years old, and my mother, who was 19 at the time, getting hired as an usherette. She was one of the hostesses who would help show people to their seats. And they actually met at a Mets game, believe it or not, in May of 64. So it starts there. And then I was born 4 years later, 3 months premature. I was 1 pound, 15 ounces, and spent the first 2.5 months in an incubator in the hospital. So I tell that story as well. So it starts at a really young age. And then, obviously growing up in a sportscasting family, a lot of stories about my youth. And when my uncles, Al and Steve, also longtime play-by-play announcers, would come over, it was like I was listening to the first all-sports radio station. They would be telling all kinds of stories. And then, it evolved. I used to call games into a tape recorder in my bedroom. And then when I was in high school, got real lucky when a local cable station came to my school, and I volunteered to do the play-by-play and wound up working about 75 to 100 games for them. And then on to college and minor league hockey in Baltimore with the Skipjacks, and 3 years at HTS, Home Team Sports in Washington, calling Capitals games. And here we are 30 years later. So it's really a compilation of stories about, the early portion of my life, and then calling 4 different sports and Olympics. And there are travel tales in the book, and stories about the 200-plus analysts I've worked with, including the great Joe Theismann on Redskins, and then eventually Commanders preseason telecasts. There's a chapter paying it forward to young high school and college broadcasters out there who want to get into the business. So it's not only about sports and broadcasting. There's a lot about family and hard work and dedication, but hopefully it's a great read that your listeners are able to pick up prior to the holiday season.
I knew you were coming on. I was thinking about this like a couple of weeks ago, actually. I think you called Commanders Giants, right? Was it you were down here for that one?
I did.
Yeah, okay. So at that game, it was my son's birthday was the next day, and I don't typically do this. I don't like to have distractions in the booth when I call the game, and not that my family should be described as a distraction, but you know what I mean. Like I want to be focused, and I don't want to have a lot going on around me that I'm concerned about. But because it was his birthday, I decided to make an exception. I had him in there, and he tried to become my spotter while he was in there. Like, he took it extremely seriously and like almost like a job, and wanted to help me, which I totally appreciated. And I was thinking about you when you were coming on here, because what are your memories of being in the booth with your dad when you were a kid?
Well, first of all, how old is your son?
He's 11.
Okay, so, and I write this in the book, the first time that I ever actually kept the stats for him, it was for the third period of a hockey game. I was 7 years old. It was actually my birthday trip. It was February of 1975. For my 7th birthday, I went with him, believe it or not, to the Capitol Center in Landover, and it was a Rangers-Capitals game. It was the first year the Capitals were in existence. And you can look this up. It was kind of a memorable night in franchise history in those early years. There was an ice show at the arena the night before. So when the Rangers and Capitals arrived for this game, the ice was still colored. They couldn't get it back to just white. It was all messed up from the ice show the night before. So the start of the game was delayed about 2 hours. And he was there doing the radio for the Rangers, and they had a statistician who had a really early morning flight the next day. And because the game was delayed 2 hours, he left early to go home to get ready for the flight. So I took over in the third period, keeping stats at the age of 7, believe it or not. Kept track of the goals and the assists and the penalties. So that was the first time it was a game, the first season of the Capitals. And then when I was old enough, 14, 15 years old, I would start to keep the stats at MSG for him. But similar to your son, I remember tagging along, and there was a point where I was probably 11 or 12, and I was in the booth at MSG, and I started doing play-by-play, to myself, but out loud, and it started to bleed through the mic a little bit, so they told me to, I had to quiet down and go move to another row. So, but it's great that your son was there for his birthday, and I'm sure that'll be a memorable experience for him.
Yeah, I think it was. It was funny. He was actually trying to be a spotter, like less stats, but like be a spotter for me. He was like pointing out numbers to me because we don't have a spotter in my booth. So I thought it was interesting.
And I know where you guys are somewhat in the corner, so it's a little difficult to see. So I'm sure you'll take all the help you can get.
Well, yeah, but you have to trust. Like, did your dad trust your stats at 7 years old to actually say them on the air? Because that's where I was. Like, do I trust that what he's telling me is actually accurate in real time?
For hockey on the radio, it's not as important. Yeah. It's just the goals, the assists, the penalties. So you kind of don't really need a statistician. But I think it did get to the point, when I was 15, 16, 17, and I could tell when he did start to trust me because he would actually use the notes on the air. And he had been in a similar spot. He was doing stats at that age for the great Marty Glickman back in the 1950s. He was a Knicks ball boy and worked as an intern for the Brooklyn Dodgers. So he met a lot of the broadcasters, and Marty Glickman took him on as a statistician. So it was sort of history repeating itself when I started to do it.
Kenny, do you have kids?
I have 2 girls.
So have they ever wanted to be part of anything like this or travel with you or be in the booth with you?
So my daughters are a little older than your kids. They're 24 and 20. And my older one actually works in the business behind the scenes. She's a video editor / producer at the NHL. She works at the National Hockey League office, and she went to Syracuse. She was in Newhouse, but never wanted to be on the air, in front of the microphone, in front of the camera, although she did some of it in college in her classes. But she's really enjoying what she's doing, as far as the video editing and producing.
Yeah. So what an interesting family to grow up in. You always knew when you were a kid you wanted to follow in your dad's footsteps? You never thought about doing anything else?
Never thought about doing anything else. I was never forced to do it. I was never told you have to do play-by-play. It was something that I always loved, and I never knew anything different. Right, growing up around it, I thought it was the greatest thing. I would get to tag along to games in the WNBC TV studio in New York with him, and my brother and sisters younger than me. We would all rotate going on road trips, and my friends would come along, to games and. Again, that was what I grew up around, so I didn't know any different. He was away a lot on weekends and at nights, similar to me, when my kids were younger, but we make the best of it. I felt like I had the opposite schedule of most parents when my kids were younger, but I was there for a lot of the weekday stuff. And this, working in radio, our schedules are a little bit different than the norm. But I would drive to school, pick up from school whenever I could, go to the weekday activities. I might miss a lot of the weekend, but tried to be there as much as possible. So,
like, when you finally kind of followed this, obviously you were going to do it. You've got these incredible mentors, your whole family. Your father, though, obviously at the time, and it's still now, is legendary for his performances on the air. Were you ever concerned getting into it that you'd have to kind of live up to some kind of standard that he had set?
I never really felt any pressure. I get that question a lot. And for the folks who read the book or will read the book, I tried to do as much as possible in high school and college, internships, college radio station, other jobs. I was really busy back then, just trying to prepare myself and I guess try to outwork others out there and do as much as possible. And I think one of the best things that happened was when I was hired by the Baltimore Skipjacks of the American Hockey League in 1990. That was an unbelievable experience, doing minor league hockey for 2 years, riding the bus, 6, 8, 10-hour bus rides, just learning the ins and outs of pro sports and also getting the reps, 80 games a year times 2, sometimes with the color analyst, sometimes without. It was just an experience that I would never trade in for anything. And then when I moved on to home team sports and did the Caps and filled in on some Bullets and Orioles broadcasts as well and some college sports, I felt like those 5 years, away from my hometown sort of allowed me to develop my own identity. So I didn't really feel that pressure that you talked about. Maybe I should have. But I also felt like I had great teachers and tried to learn as much as I can, as much as I could back then via osmosis, whether about the actual broadcast, the preparation, and just tried to, let it all sink in while I was growing up, and then had those 5 tremendous years in Baltimore and Washington.
I mean, since you mentioned the Capitals, well, Ron Weber was the voice of the team back then when you were calling Capitals games on television. I don't know if you saw this the other day, but he finally moved out of the area. They did Ron Weber night, Ron Weber appreciation night here for him to say goodbye to him.
I did. I did see that. He's a great man. I actually kept stats for Ron on a couple of occasions back before my professional career started, and it was a different TV situation when I was there. I only did the home games for the most part. It was a split package. So I did the home games on HTS with Craig Laughlin, a couple of away games here and there, but Channel 20 did the road games, and it was Jeff Rimmer at first and Joe Beninati, so it was split as far as the play-by-play. But Ron was, a great mentor and had that long streak going, never missed a game from 1974 until I think 96 or 97. So he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, won the Foster Hewitt Award for broadcasting excellence, well-deserved, and always loved bumping into him. He would still go to the Caps games. He would come up to the press box as recently as last season and say hi. So great to see that he was acknowledged by the Caps, as he was during their Stanley Cup parade back in 2018. I know they had him out there for that as well.
All right, here's what I always wanted to ask you. So you've been the radio voice of the Rangers, New York Rangers, for a very long time. And you're one of the lead voices on NHL for TNT, so I'm sure you're getting Rangers games because they're good. What is the difference for you in preparation and how you want to describe a game to a Rangers audience on the radio and a national audience when you're calling the same team?
Well, it's perfect timing, Bram, because tomorrow I have my first Rangers game on TNT this season. Yeah. They host the Red Wings. And for many years, 10 or so years, when I was calling games over at NBC, the great Doc Emmerich and Eddie Olczyk, were the top team, and then I was calling games, and now at TNT with Eddie and Brian Boucher. There is a difference between radio and television, as you know, but also a local broadcast, and I did a Rangers game on radio last night, and then I'll have a national game tomorrow. Obviously, you don't have to talk as much on TV. On radio, you have to be so descriptive, give the time and score a lot more. When I'm working for MSG, doing a Rangers broadcast, we're not rooting on the air necessarily, but you obviously want your team to do well, just like your broadcast with the Commanders. The better they do, the better it is for you and your broadcast, and the deeper they go in the playoffs, it benefits you and the broadcast and the station, et cetera. But on TV, you have to be 50-50, and I do have to remind myself to get just as excited for the goals by the opposition as the Rangers. But, we see it in all sports. Joe Buck for so many years was the voice of the St. Louis Cardinals, and he did the World Series. Mike Breen's the voice of the Knicks. He does the NBA Finals on ESPN. Mike Emmerich for years was the voice of the Devils and had to call their games in the Stanley Cup Finals. So, you learn as a professional how to kind of go back and forth between those local and network scenarios.
All right. One, just on your expertise, that you're around the Rangers all the time. They're having an incredible start to their season, and they have our ex-coach now in his first year there with Peter Laviolette. So why is it working so well here early in the season for them and Peter Laviolette?
Well, the Rangers are a team, they've been on the upswing for the last 3 or 4 years. They went to the Eastern Conference Final 2 years ago and then lost in the first round to New Jersey last year after winning the first 2 games, 5-1, 5-1. When you look at their team on paper, from the goaltending on out, one of the top rosters in the league. They have Igor Shesterkin, their starting goaltender, who's among the best in the league. This year they brought in Jonathan Quick as the backup, who's won 3 Stanley Cups, and he's been outstanding. They have a great group of defensemen led by Adam Fox, a Norris Trophy winner a couple of years ago, who's eligible to return tomorrow after missing 10 games due to injury. And they have a combination of 3 or 4 all-star caliber forwards up front. and then a mixture of youth and veterans on their other lines. So on paper, they're a real good team. Last year it ended a lot sooner than they had hoped. But Peter Laviolette's come in and done a terrific job. He has a history of great success in his early years with teams. He won a Stanley Cup with Carolina, went to the final with Philadelphia and Nashville. And he's also brought in terrific assistant coaches, Mike Pekka, who was a great face-off man during his career. The Rangers have not been that good on face-offs the last 5 or 6 years. This year they're among the top teams in the league. Phil Housley, a former Norris Trophy winning defenseman, Hall of Famer, working for the Rangers group of D-men. So it's all come together. They're 15-4-1 over the first 20. Still a long way to go. They also do have some injury issues. Like I said, Fox has been out. They've been missing Philip Hedl, their second-line center, and now Capo Caco suffered a major injury last night. So they've been able to do it, withstand those injuries, and for the first time in franchise history, they won 15 of their first 19 games. That had never happened before, and then lost to Buffalo last night.
All right, Kenny Albert, who you can hear and see everywhere, has a new book. It's called A Mic for All Seasons, about his outstanding broadcasting career. Kenny, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Bram, really appreciate it. The book actually has its own Instagram account, A Mic for All Seasons, for your listeners if they'd like to follow the travels of the book. But really appreciate you having me on, and hopefully I'll have another Commanders game soon and we can chat in person.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks, Bram.
All right, that's Kenny Albert. All right, we'll be right back. Bram Washington Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. The Wizards are brutal this year, but I think we found their medicine last night.
Playing a team worse than them? Yeah. I mean,
well, the weird part is, and I don't know, I guess I should just have empathy for them. We knew we were going to be really bad this year. How bad, I don't know. And then there are these laughable moments, like another one from Jordan Poole last night. He is not a serious person. Like, that is, every night there's a clip from him from the game that he does something that's otherworldly crazy. There was, what was it last night? He got blocked. He did like a preposterous block.
He did like a pump fake to get a Detroit defender to do the jump over. Yeah. And then another Detroit defender came over and just swatted the ball into the stands.
Yes. We've seen every night it's some kind of strange highlight of his that's like crazy. Like when they put this all together by the end of the year, it's going to be amazing.
I mean, I said this maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the season. It's hard to climb up the power rankings of goofy Wizards, especially in the last 20 years. But somehow he has probably at this point surpassed the JaVale McGee, Nick Young era. Like Nick Young has some dumb, boneheaded moments, but Nick Young is actually a professional player, like played in the league for a long time.
Jordan Poole scored 20-plus points for the Warriors. My expectations were a little higher than this.
Right. And like I get it. Like McGee, I think, is actually still playing too. So like they both, were actually professionals.
No one thought Nick Young was going to be some crazy star.
Correct. Yeah.
You could sell me that Jordan Poole was going to replace Steph Curry, which clearly is not the case.
No, not at all. And I think it's twofold. We thought he was going to be this big volume shooter and have these big nights, and he hasn't done that really. And he's actually had some down nights where we're like, what were you doing all night, man? And then he has a moment every other game, it seems, that goes viral.
It's weird. Yeah, they're like, it's either it's in the huddle, which he had to address.
Right, yeah.
Because it was brought up, or the ones that are in game that are crazy.
That are ridiculous.
Just crazy.
And now
go look at this one from last night. It's crazy.
And now it's happening too, where now guys are watching you to make these moves. So I'm sure like really over the course of a season, some of these get missed because people are watching the Lakers or watching another major game or whatever. Nobody's really paying attention. But now that it's like pretty consistent, you're going to get one play from him every day or two or every game or two. Everybody's paying attention now. You'd think he would kind of parse it down a bit.
If I was on a bad team where the outcomes don't matter because you're playing them, like last night, where you got 2-2, 14 teams, like ridiculous records, right? I would, to motivate, but you got to find ways to motivate yourself. I would be like in the timeout, ISO this guy, let's see who can get a highlight with him.
Right.
Just give it to him.
Yeah.
Like, not
idea,
don't defend him.
Yeah, let him try to crumble under pressure.
Give him the ball and let's just see what happens. And see if one of us can get on SportsCenter tonight doing some crazy thing or watch him do some crazy thing.
That's going to be
the best moment for the Pistons last night, amazingly, is that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say this too. I guess when they play like the Spurs, I bet you that's Popovich.
Yeah.
Popovich is going to go
ahead.
Give him the ball.
Just give him the ball.
And watch what happens.
Yeah.
He's going to screw up and it's going to go the other way or whatever needs to
Wemby's
happen.
going to have like the viral moment where he swats something in the 10th row from him. Meantime, my point of all this is I knew the Wizards were going to be bad. They are kind of laughably bad, but they killed this team last night. And they killed them, and they had the number 1 overall pick 3 years ago, and they had the number 5 overall pick the last 2 years. So they should be conceptually ahead of where the Wizards are, and they're worse than them.
Yeah.
And I talk about this all the time with the Commanders. It infuriates me that every time we beat somebody, they lose their minds because they just can't handle the fact. And here are the Pistons, who probably were at a breaking point anyway at 2-14, but got blown out on their home court by a really not even arguable bad team.
Laughable team.
Laughably bad team, and they blew them out. And Monty Williams lost it on them, and it went off on them.
Yeah.
Because they lost to them.
Correct.
It's what it is. We have 2 of those now. We have 2 teams here that if you lose to us, your people will lose your minds up there.
Correct.
Like, it's unacceptable.
Yes.
It's become unacceptable. At least in the Wizards' case, I agree. They're not putting a competitive basketball team out there. They shouldn't win a game.
Right.
They shouldn't win a game.
I will say this perception is going to change of the Commanders. Like, the reports are already saying, it's a desirable spot.
Of course it is.
Never heard that in my life here.
Of course. Everyone, it's so funny every time I hear that. First off, I would argue there are no bad NFL jobs. Like, stop it. Are there better places than others? Sure. There's only 32 NFL teams, and I don't know. Like, it's the same thing with when you hear nobody's going to want to go to these places because of where they are. I don't know. Do the free agents, are they vying to go to Buffalo, Kansas City, and Cincinnati? Because they're in the playoffs every year.
Right.
But that's the thing. Nobody will want to go play there. No, they want to play for a winner. Like, they want to go for the most money and for a winner. That's where people want to be. They'll put up with the locale. They don't care. And the whole idea that, like, there's no such, like, the Commander's job's a bad job. Is it? Because, I don't know, Dan Snyder, who everybody reviled, hired Marty Schottenheimer, Steve Spurrier, Joe Gibbs, and Mike Shanahan, and Ron Rivera. Well, couldn't have been that hard.
Right.
A couple of those people are in the Hall of Fame, and one of them should be Shanahan.
Right.
And Schottenheimer, for that matter. So don't tell me that, like, oh, it's a good job or a bad job. Now, to the point of, is it a better job than it's been? Yes. Like, because the cloud of what's owning the team and all the investigations will be gone by the time you take over. And secondarily, the table is set for someone to come in here and reshape the roster immediately.
That's right.
That's why it's a good job.
Yep.
There's going to be $90 million in cap space, a lot of expiring contracts, 3 very high draft picks. Have at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Have at it. So it's better than it's been. But whenever I hear, like, oh, that's a bad job, sure, pal. There's only 32 of them.
Right.
People will go. Like, guess what? Like, the Arizona ownership is the one squarely in the crosshairs. 2 years ago, they were in the playoffs with a quarterback, and they had a high-profile coach. Like, end.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it is arguable that there are certain people that it's usually the veterans are going to go, I'm good. I'm going to stay away from that one. Like, that's the only case.
The veterans always want to sign on to the place where they think they can win, though.
Yes, right.
Like, Shaquille Leonard is visiting the Cowboys and the Eagles.
I meant that for both coaches and players, by the way. Like, Mike Shanahan really signed on here because they basically wouldn't let him say no and gave him whatever they wanted.
That's right.
Whatever he wanted. So he wasn't supposed to coach here.
As for the Pistons, I feel bad for them. Monty Williams went off on him and said there was no fight. This isn't Pistons basketball by any stretch of the imagination. We have to have people here who honor the organization and the jersey by competing at a high level. I'm not talking about execution. I'm talking about competing, is what he said.
That's never good.
A week ago, Cade Cunningham, when asked by the Detroit Free Press, like about the team, he described it as, we know we're bad. And said, we all want to win. Everybody's doing it out of the spirit of that, wanting to win and wanting to do its best, but we need to be more aggressive. He agreed. He's basically said, we don't play hard enough here.
I think I need to just say this because I got mad at Maryland last week when Michigan was coming into town, or 2 weeks ago, was coming into town, and they were assuming they were going to beat Maryland. And I got mad that nobody was saying anything, that they were like, they're guaranteeing win, and that they were saying Harbaugh should be on the field for this win, like on Wednesday before they were coming into town. Okay, we have the Pistons coach going off on them after the loss last night. We had the Bulls lose their mind one game into the season.
1 game in, players only meeting 1 game
We've had Wizards players and Wes say things about the desire and the effort level, but we haven't had a players only meeting or a full-on...
No. We don't do that around here.
Guys.
Yesterday, I went off for 20 minutes about how Dak eating a turkey leg after knocking us off. we just got punked by our arch rival again, and no one seems to be upset about it.
Yeah.
Probably because it was Thanksgiving and Jack Del Rio was fired the next day, so everybody's attention got split away from it. But do you remember that part, that our arch rival just punked us for the second time in 3 years? Like, just totally made fun of us.
Right, but what I'm getting at here is there are 2 other basketball teams, including the one they beat, that are showing that they cared, so they yell at each other a little bit. And I'm not even seeing that with this team.
Why are we doing this if the people involved don't care?
Right.
That's the larger point of the whole thing.
Right.
We're living vicarious through you guys. If you don't care, why should I?
Right.
That's why Wizards Bra is the all-time. This is why it's hard to get behind this thing. If your players are saying Wizards Bra and then you pay them a lot of money, then you signed on with that.
And then force a trade to another team.
And you wonder, why don't a lot of people love the Wizards or want to engage with the Wizards? Their own players don't care.
Right.
There's no accountability for the outcome or the effort. The Pistons stink. At least they're yelling it out loud. We don't want to be this way. It's not right. We shouldn't be this way. There was a period of time where this was one of the best franchises in sports. I guess everybody could probably say that at some point, but there was a point in time when they were. In fact, there was a point in time when they were undeniably the toughest team in sports and known that way.
That's right.
And now they are snowflakes. All-time snowflakes. They have 3 top 5 picks, and they lost to the Wizards by like 30 last night.
Detroit Snowflakes.
Snowflakes
has a good ring to it.
The Snowflakes. It's a great name for some woke community team, the Snowflakes.
Portland Snowflakes.
The Portland Snowflakes. Oh, that's incredible merch. That's incredible merch. Their messaging in their end zones, unbelievable. What sport do they play? What do the Portland Snowflakes play? Pickleball? What's the woke sport these days? Is that basketball? It's got to be basketball. That's the woke sport, isn't it?
Could be soccer.
They already have a team. They'd have to have a competing team. The Portland Snowflakes.
No, this is a rebrand. Just rebrand.
The Portland Snowflakes is a great name.
That should actually be.
What's their mascot?
Hot take. That should actually be
Is their mascot a Karen?
No. It's just a giant. It's just a giant snowflake.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think it's got to be a distressed human being.
But it's a rainbow flag snowflake.
A sad human being, huh?
It's a rainbow flag snowflake.
Rainbow flag snowflake.
Pride flag.
Oh.
That would irk some people, I think.
Oh, down the hall. Oh, God, they would have nothing to do with it.
Actually,
They'd quit sports.
Hot take.
I'm quitting sports.
Hot take. The Jazz should be the snow or the snowflakes.
Yeah. Oh.
Because we know there's no Jazz in Utah.
They can't do snowflakes there. That's not woke. Salt Lake City? Opposite of woke.
I know I'm deviating. Utah snow has a good ring to it.
I agree.
And they could just
Better
wear the
than
same.
Jazz.
They wear the same mountain jerseys that are sweet.
With that snow.
Right.
Yeah. Utah snow. Great. I love it. Let's do it. We'll send them a note.
There you go.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
The Capitals lost to the worst team in the NHL last night.
They did.
Few days after you told me that they're Stanley Cup contenders.
Sure.
So
Sharks 5-1-1 at home in their last 7. So they're home cooking a little bit here.
Right.
This is one of those games, too. If I showed you the game tape without the goals, you would literally say, oh, the Caps won that game. They had chances, played really well. Power play even had some chances. They didn't score on it. Still, by the way, they're
that's the weird one. That's not only not clicking. They haven't scored a goal in weeks.
It's been an hour. Somebody did it yesterday. It has been a full hour of power play
time. It's been like 10 games, something like that.
They didn't score all of the month of November so far, so that's not going well. But it's funny. That's what I keep saying though. They were winning without that clicking. It seemed to look better last night. But if I showed you the game tape from last night, you would say, "Oh, the Caps won that." They didn't. They lose a close one. This happens on the West Coast with them sometimes. I'm not panicking on this one at all whatsoever. Darcy Kemper looked good, by the way, after I warned you again last night that. How is he going to look? So Kemper looked all right. I would say this, though. Alex Ovechkin needs to get this thing going somehow. I'm already seeing Russian Machine wrote a piece today saying he's on pace for only like 20, 23 goals. And if that's the pace he's on, it's going to take like 4 more seasons of Ovi playing to break the record. And so I will say that the top 6 needs to get it going just a little bit more. Heading into the road trip. I will say tomorrow is going to be tough. They're playing at the Kings. Kings are having a solid start to the season. They have the best PK in the league. So the best PK in the league will be going against the worst power play in the league.
Oh, so the West Coast trip continues to go in the wrong direction, at least for now.
Probably, and it's back-to-back. So they get the Kings, then the Ducks. So it's Wednesday, Thursday. So let's hope they get 2 of those 4 points so this thing doesn't go sideways on them. Because then It's tough.
Well, what's Ted going to do to get everybody to turn that frown upside down? Put everybody's dog on a plane and fly them to Los Angeles. It'll be Doggy Player Day in Los Angeles.
God, I don't even know where that came from.
It's a possibility.
Saturday,
it's possible. Sounds plausible.
Saturday is Vegas, by the way. Vegas is going to be out for blood because they shut them out last time. So that's going to be bad. And then Monday's Coyotes. So hopefully 2 or 3 points over the next 3 games, I think, is what we're going to aim for here on this one.
I would like to be the president of operations of the Portland Snowflakes. I really would like to be in charge of that team. I'll hire you.
Oh, yeah, I want to do the rebrand.
You can be the vice president.
I want to do the branding.
Vice president of the Portland Snowflakes.
Pride night every night here.
Every night. We don't even need to announce it. All right, we'll be right back. Bram Buster Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. It wasn't full rocket sausage darts, but David Tepper did hold a press conference today to explain why he's heading into Coach 7 of a 4-year tenure and why he's now fired 3 coaches mid-season. 3 times in 4 years he's fired a coach in the middle of a season. That is unhinged. I'm sorry, that is unhinged. And there's no explanation for it. It's unhinged.
I'm glad we are not in this discussion anymore of worst owners because he's
trying to take
trying to be number one. It's probably him.
We'll talk to Tisha about what's going on in Arizona.
Right,
because that's got a tinge of what we lived through with the, oh Lord, this guy.
Right. But I'm
like
trying to
you can't look him in the eye.
Right.
You know, which I don't know. It's the Tepper situation sounds like anything goes, but we haven't heard that yet where the men can't talk to the women, which is like what they're saying in Arizona right now.
And I mean, look, the Colts are winning now, but I think everyone kind of is on edge with Irsay, especially off of last week, which we didn't talk about because there's just so many things going on.
I was arrested because I'm a white billionaire.
And then he had some
then
he had some follow-up stuff that was really weird.
Andrea Kramer, even I appreciate they did this, where the follow-up was, you know how that sounds, right?
Right.
And she's like, I don't care how it sounds.
Right. So
he pulled a Joe Namath, I don't care that the Jets are struggling. I want to kiss you, is like what he pulled. What he pulled.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's between the Panthers, Colts, Cardinals get an honorable mention as well. I think that's it right now. I think everyone else is fine in the NFL, but I'm just glad we're not in the discussion anymore because this Tepper dude, I think, it's bad with him.
Well, my favorite quote from today was asked about patience.
Yeah, that was the quote. That was one of the 2 money quotes. The other one was on the quarterback pick and what he kind of revealed there. But yeah, go on that one.
Hold on, let me find the patience. The patience one, I think, was my favorite part of the whole thing. I can't find it. Dang it. I can't find the quote.
He said he's known for being patient away from football.
Yes. Asked about the patience. He said this. Look, there are reasons for each individual situation. He said, you guys, upon your own reflection, looking into what happened in the season, can understand that. Again, I'm not going to get into the particulars, but I do have patience. My reputation away from this game is one of extreme patience. Now, that patience comes with good performance and things you want to see, progress that you want to see in different aspects. So you don't have patience.
Right.
You're saying if things don't go exactly as you planned them, then you're not going to exhibit any patience whatsoever. And I think this. Firing 3 coaches in 4 years in the middle of the season is not something that heads towards any kind of level of success rate. But call me crazy for making that kind of grandiose assessment of what you're doing. Because 1, it doesn't show patience. 2, come on now. How do you think things are going to get better overnight when you do things like that?
Right. Like it's unhinged to not just let the season play out. Like that's the other part of this that I don't really understand is you were 1-10, man. You're not clawing your way out of that record or your place in the standings. You might as well just let it play out and see what happens. And look, Frank Reich's a professional coach. Maybe he gets a few wins down the stretch or you show something, but doing that now and then, of course, letting McCown, who's respected, and Deuce Staley go.
I bet you Deuce Staley probably said to him, make me the interim coach. And if
maybe.
McCown,
maybe too.
Remember,
he was
maybe they both went to him and said, we want to be the interim coach. And if they weren't given that, they're like, then we're out.
Right.
Who are you going to hire? Jeff Saturday? What's next?
Jeff Saturday.
This is the best.
Don't bet against me, man. This is going to work.
You know, and the other thing, too, is for those who are like new owner, never been in sports before, he was a part owner of the Steelers.
Right. Right.
So It's not like he hasn't been part of the NFL. And that is the most, by far, not close in sports, most stable organization.
Well, and I said this before.
For better or worse, and most of the time for better, but they are the model of stability. They do nothing knee-jerk. The firing of Matt Canada came under extraordinary pressure that they haven't felt in 50-plus years. They'd never done anything like that before in the history of their organization. They never fired somebody in the middle of a season.
Yeah, right.
Even an assistant coach. They hadn't done it. They finally did once. This guy, if you don't win every Sunday, you might be out, is kind of like the message.
I have to
win or off with your head.
I have to look it up, too. I think he's fired 2 coaches for the MLS team, too. Yeah, because I think I said that
one
like
of them was in the
ago.
first season of its existence. Yeah. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, Guy, you sound real patient.
Yeah, real patient. I think he's
Apparently
really
in sports, not so much.
He's the bad sports fan.
Yeah, right.
That's what he is.
Yep.
He's the guy who hates everything if it doesn't work.
He
will find things wrong with it. I said this earlier today. I go, for all of you trying to find things wrong with everybody on this team right now, I'm not going to be down with it.
Yeah.
You need to stop. Like, yes, Terry McLaurin's numbers aren't what you want them to be this year. There's probably a lot of reasons for that. He doesn't stink. He's not going anywhere. So whatever fringe element's trying to find something wrong with him now, stop it. I don't want to hear it from you. Tepper seems like he's one of those guys.
Well,
he's going to find something wrong with everybody.
This is the problem, too, just like Dan. Dan learned this early on. You can't be Mr. Sports Fan and an owner and act like one while you are the owner, because this is what happens. You start knee-jerk reacting. You know what you have to do? You have to sit back and let the money flow in and be way more patient than any fan would be, because guess what? Honestly, we've said this before, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose when you're an owner. The money's going to flow in regardless.
When do you have to step in?
Play out.
When do you have to step in? In Vegas, where you had the players don't want to play for
players
the
are
guy.
Smoking cigars after they won without their
They wanted
coach.
him. They wanted him gone.
Yes.
Same thing happened in Detroit with Patricia.
Yep.
See, this is what I was trying to say about Rivera. For all the people who wanted his head lopped off, I'm like, that's not what's happening here.
Right.
Like, the players will play for this guy. They don't. In fact, the truth is, they want him to seize more control of the operation.
Mm-hmm.
He ceded. It's one of the mistakes he made this year. He ceded too much control.
Right.
And the players haven't really liked that.
Yep.
It's a big part of the story this year. And it was calculated move on his part. It's backfired, but they don't want him gone. They've wanted him to exert more of his will on the team.
Right.
That's what's going to happen. It's probably too late to fix everything, and I don't think there will be a magical new defense that comes out there this weekend. However, this was necessary, and the owner did the right thing. You don't just fire a guy to fire a guy. You have to have a plan. They didn't even have a plan for this. Like, look, they fired 2 respected. Josh McCown, he almost got the Texans job.
That's right.
There were a lot of teams that were looking at him as an assistant coach. So clearly a lot of people like him. The Texans were crazy to install him as a head coach, but everyone else seems to think he might have something to make him an assistant coach. Deuce Staley's got an incredible reputation. They walked out the door too. The most viable head coaching candidate that was on that staff, Deuce Staley, walked out the door too.
Yep.
You don't have a plan.
That's right. Exactly.
I saw things that said the team found out about this on Twitter.
Oh, God. I didn't know about that.
Huh?
This guy.
So he flies off the handle.
Did you hear this was like one that perked my ears up, and a lot of other people too. Did you hear him talk about the 1st and 2nd overall picks?
Yes.
He was like basically alluding to, we thought
the quote's weird. I have it. The quote's weird about it.
Yeah. If you have
because you're asking him now because look, they're 1-10. CJ Stroud might be the MVP.
Right.
If they make the playoffs, or if they somehow win that division, or he might be the MVP.
That's right. Right. But it was something along the lines.
And they traded away a lot to not take him.
It was something along the lines of the Texans were sitting at number 2.
Yes.
And I guess they thought they were going to trade up to number 1. Something happened
here. It doesn't
here
change the fact that you had number 1. You could have taken either one.
That's right.
Of them.
Yes, because he was going, we wanted Stroud no matter, like, I forget what it was. It was really confusing, though. Basically, it seemed like he was trying to, like, hedge on they were going to take Stroud no matter what, or they thought the Texans were going to trade. Either way, he defended the pick, of course, because you have to trade it. You're not even under year 1 under Bryce Young yet, so you're not going to, like, kick him to the curb. But it was really weird how he kind of just convoluted up of, like, defending the pick, whether they had the first or the second overall pick, regardless.
This is what he said about it. David Newton, who covers the Panthers, wrote this. While Tepper deflected from answering most questions, he did not hesitate to support the decision to select Bryce Young, who is 1-9 as the starter and ranked next to last among qualified quarterbacks in total QBR. Quote, now, look, everything that's right here, everything that's wrong here, ultimately it's my fault. I've got the final say. But as far as those decisions, whether it's Frank Reich or it's Bryce Young, those decisions were made. And in the case of Bryce, it was almost, I believe it was unanimous from the coaches and the scouts and very strong opinions at the time. And then added that he was, quote, totally confident in agreeing with that pick.
Right.
What does that mean? That is, he's trying to wiggle himself into because he's not stupid enough to say we made the wrong pick, because then he ruins any possibility of the guy wanting to play there. Then his agent calls the next day and goes, oh, the owner thinks this was a mistake. You can trade me.
That's right.
And 15 teams will line up and go, let's get him.
Of course.
Let's see. You know, like maybe he's good, maybe he's not. Maybe he just needs to get out of there. Let's find out.
Probably what it is.
Let's find out. So he didn't do that, but the way you use your language matters. And he tried a little bit to distance himself from the decision. He said, I was totally confident in agreeing with that pick.
Yeah.
Meaning I was willing to be confident that you were going to get it right. Now that you're wrong and I had to fire you, that's all he's saying there.
Yeah.
So if I'm Bryce Young, one, I don't like what's going on here.
Of course.
You know, two.
Year one of your development and your head coach gets fired, and your offensive coordinator and Deuce Staley goes out the door.
The owner needs to be very clear. This isn't about Bryce Young. We 100% believe in him, whether you do or you don't. We 100% believe that he is going to be our franchise quarterback for the future. We felt like we did not. This year's been bad. We had to make changes. We did. We're going to put a support system around him to succeed.
Yeah.
That's not what he said. All he basically said was, yeah, I agreed with the pick. I was confident in agreeing with the pick. But by firing all these people, you're almost saying, and that was a decision they made, which is another problem I have with them.
Right. And
he's making matters worse, which is very hard to do.
Well,
he
he flip-flopped too, because he goes, I could have vetoed it if I wanted to. Well, yeah, dude, we know you own the freaking team. Like, you can do whatever you want when it comes down to it.
What was it like? 3 weeks ago, Reich was like, yeah, he's in a lot of the meetings. Yeah. Was he in the offensive meeting? Probably Deuce Staley's like, get out of here.
Revisionist history.
I don't even think Dan did that. Dan was involved with all the player personnel stuff.
Yeah, right.
And had too cozy a relationship with the stars and was making draft picks. Everybody knows about all that. No one ever complained that Dan walked into their meetings and was telling them to run the screen pass on 3rd and 7. I never heard that about. No coach ever said that to me. They said he was meddlesome. He wanted accountability. He could do things like this, like make some decisions like flippantly that would kind of disrupt stuff. But no one ever told me he was in meetings. Reich basically said that he's in meetings.
Revisionist history, that's probably when Reich knew he was done, when he started mentioning that out loud.
Yeah.
Had to be.
He probably wanted to get fired at that point. He's like, this is not going to happen. Well, this is really bad. I got to get out of here.
That's the joke on Twitter now. It's like, you go to the Panthers, you sign a 4 or 5 year deal, and you're fired in year 1. You're getting paid for the next 4.
Matt Rule never wanted to sign there. Matt Rule.
He pulled the Scherzer before Scherzer had to do it.
Matt Rule was offered the biggest contract of any coach, okay? And he was like, does anybody else want to bid?
Yeah, that's right.
Anyone else?
Anyone. Giants, I really want to go coach you.
I really want to go somewhere else?
They went with Joe Judge, by the way.
Well, because they weren't going to pay him $80 million, whatever the number was. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll just take this. Didn't go very well.
Man.
This is bad. So then I saw Greg Olson put out there, I'd be interested in that.
It was like a sort, it wasn't him directly, but it was,
If you approach me, I would talk to you about it, which obviously would be a really dumb thing to do.
That is, though, I'll be your Huckleberry all the way. That's also doing what I just said. Yeah, give me a 3-year, $60 million deal, Tepper, and then I'll get fired.
Here's where I am on that one. I actually think it's a smart thing to do, not to be a coach. I think he's doing it to send a little fire one back at Fox.
Yeah.
He's done a great job for them. They got Tom Brady. What are you going to do?
Sure.
Tom Brady's going to be in the number 1 booth. That's going to happen. Greg Olson is going to be in a booth because he's outstanding. But I think it is worthwhile to fire one back at them and go, you know what?
Yeah.
If another opportunity came my way, I'd listen to it.
Right.
Whether it's with, I don't know, Amazon or ESPN or CBS or, I don't know, Crazy Tepper in the Carolina Panthers, where I had arguably a Hall of Fame career. I would go back and coach for them. And I don't even take that as serious. I think he did this, to me, it was his agent seizing an opportunity to go, we need to take a little shot at Fox because they're about to replace you on the top team after the Super Bowl's over.
It's also they have an owner crazy enough that might actually do it.
Maybe.
Too. Like this isn't somebody saying they want to coach the Patriots. We know Kraft would never do that. Tepper might actually hire Olsen. That's probably the crazier part about all of it.
And then there was the one more. As you know, things around here aren't going particularly well.
Right.
We have a new owner. They're not going to make a decision about whatever they're going to do, and I'm going to let the final 5 games play out. Let's see where we are, and then those decisions will be made. But as you might imagine, that name's popped up again as a do-over in the place he loves. Loves Charlotte. Loves it.
Can we trade him?
Oh, can you imagine?
Tepper might. That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to go with this guy doesn't seem like the type of guy who would ever go, you know what, I made a mistake. Let's redo that and mend fences and start this over. However, do I think Ron would take that job again? I think in a heartbeat.
You have to remember how
I don't even think he would think about it.
You have to remember how he went out, too. Tepper fired him, but it was a super clean break. Remember they, let him do interviews afterwards, from the stadium?
Well, he at least knew well enough that Ron is so beloved down there.
Yeah,
Cam was number 1. He was number 2.
Correct. Right.
I think Ron's never totally got that part of it up here, that he's not warm and fuzzy with everybody here.
Yeah.
It's a different market, and we're also show me the goods on the field.
That's right.
You know?
Yes, of course.
We're like, yeah. We're like, all this other stuff, it sucks, you know, but you got to win.
Well, the number
it's
one.
a little bit of that. It's hey, I get it. You're doing an incredible job here with all this other stuff, and I will applaud you for it. Stop losing to the Cowboys 45-10.
Well, and it's also.
Okay, can we have both?
I've never liked this from the beginning. He has not consistently, or I felt in a way where he's doing it on purpose, but the times he has talked down to this fan base, I have thought that has rubbed it the wrong way.
What do you mean? In what way?
Where maybe not even the fan base, but sometimes it's the media too, where he has this I am so much smarter than you moments, and
there's a lot of coaches like that. Trust me, that is typically part of the personality, as I like to describe, disorder of a head coach of the NFL team. That's not unusual.
But I feel like
most of them, did you see Staley's press conference a week ago where he's telling everybody off about how great he is, when everybody's like, "You're the worst."
What I'm getting at here is he's done it overboard a few times here, and that's all I'm getting at. But when it comes down to the Carolina thing, he was that was the cleanest head coaching firing I've ever seen, where he was doing major interviews still wearing his Panthers gear that Monday or Tuesday after or whatever it was. Maybe, and look, didn't Tepper sign Cam back too? Yeah, he signed Cam back too. So
he did.
He's gone back to the well of nostalgia for this fan base.
Well, that's probably also why Greg Olsen threw his name out there, because he's like, you know what? I actually think it was just a shot at Fox. Yeah. That's what I think it was. But I also think that he's going, this guy might actually be interested in that.
Right, exactly.
Because if they did hire me, while most people in the NFL would be like, I can't believe you hired the guy out of the
Saturday
booth.
got hired last year. He's probably saying it's a non-zero chance.
Correct. And Saturday also coached the biggest comeback in the history of the NFL against his team, won 1 game out of 6, pissed off the entire organization, and they went and hired, a football coach to actually run the team.
Who actually is doing really well.
The only thing, though, and this will go back to the other thing, are there bad NFL jobs? There isn't, okay? This one is not a bad one. I will say this, though, because of his impatience and because of what he's done, if he does go after somebody who's a first-time head coach, which seems logical this time, that they would go after, I don't know, the Lions guy, maybe the Houston offensive coordinator because it's going so well, something like that. Let's say they go in that direction. That person's agent's going to demand a 6-year deal.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're just going to go, listen, we're interested. We'll work with Bryce Young. We're excited about the opportunity. However, we're worried.
I think
we're worried here. Because, if you're a first-year head coach and you don't have a pedigree and it doesn't go well, it's hard to get that second one. So you better cover my bases here. Which is why DeMeco Ryans got 6 years with the Texans, because he's like, look, man, I'm a person of color.
Yep.
I'm taking on a team that hadn't won jack in a long time. I know I'm familiar face, so that's all good. But I do know that if this goes sideways, I won't get a second job. Right. You're giving me a 6-year deal.
I wonder if an agent's going to try to sneak in some offsetting language that they won't have to try to find a job afterwards.
Right.
And I think somebody could do it.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go, I'm worried. And then if I do get fired, I would like to sail off in the sunset and not have to worry about this anymore.
That might be part of this. Frank Reich. Frank Reich, he's going to have to work next year.
Right.
But he's not going to be a head coach, and he'll probably take on some kind of consultancy role.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
So that he can get paid the money.
The next head coach is going to be like, if I get fired, I don't even have to look for a job, and he's going to have to take that language.
We have a pretty good arms race. Who burns more money in professional sports, the Mets guy or the Panthers guy?
The Mets guy, at least seemingly
he
fast.
has lit money on fire.
Sure.
With players.
But he also hasn't hesitated to do what's for the good of the team spending that money either. Like, he DFA'd big free agents that failed,
Robinson Cano.
Yeah.
He lit on fire more money than the Orioles payroll.
That's right. Yes.
Just to get him off the team.
Right. But here's the other thing, too. Like, we saw Cohen, knew it wasn't working, started breaking the team down, traded Verlander, traded Scherzer. Like, that guy spends, but I don't have a doubt that he knows how to win at least. They haven't done it yet, but having money in baseball is more than 50% of being good at this point. So I trust him way more than Tepper because you can't do that in football. Like, you can't just fix things overnight. Baseball, you can do way better with the more money you have. NFL, you're on the same level playing field as everyone else.
I got to tell you, it's funny. Like, not that I'm asking for anything to change, but just for the sake of the argument here, I wonder if Rivera's interested in it. Because you know what? Like, just consider the state of that division for a moment. Mm-hmm. It is possible that Art could lose his job if they don't make the playoffs. It's possible that Bowles could lose his job. It's possible Dennis Allen could lose. They could all lose their job. Yeah, somebody's going to win the division, so they probably won't.
Right.
But it might be like us. Like, it might be an 8-9 team, that wins that. That's what's going to end up being. So it's not going to be a good team that won it. Just someone had to win it, right? That's possible. Or, maybe Art doesn't get fired. Yeah. Maybe Dennis Allen doesn't get, if they win the division, maybe they don't fire him and they just stick it out with him for another year or something like that. If he goes back into a division like that with the number 1 overall pick from a year ago and maybe a little more stability around him, he might be in okay shape in a division like that. I mean, that's the crazy part of the whole thing. So I wonder, because if things change, where's he going to get another head coaching job? Like, I have a hard time buying that.
Yeah, I don't know.
That one.
Right.
If they were willing to do he's willing to do that, but I don't
know if he wants to be a head coach still?
I don't know.
I think that's a valid question too, if he's fired.
I do too. I mean, the whole setup this year has been very interesting. That kind of led me to believe.
Interesting or important?
Both. Led me down paths of what's going on here. We said this early. Like, when Bieniemy signed the 1-year deal that they never explicitly told you what was in it.
Right.
And then I'm like, why did he want to come here? And people had this talking point of, well, he didn't have another job. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
It seems that he didn't really interview for other jobs. He just kind of waited out the Super Bowl and then all of a sudden was installed here. So I'm going to go with that things were in the works for a lot longer than anybody wants to admit. Well, why were they in the works of a team that's being sold? Like, it never totally added up.
Right.
But when you're 4-8, plans, whatever your plans were,
do crumble. Yeah.
A little bit.